Morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today we debate a very familiar piece of legislation to this House that has been brought back from previous parliaments. Bill C-3 may be newly introduced, but the substance of the bill is more of the same. It's the same broken car that the Liberals tried to drive through this House last year with a different coat of paint. Let's be clear that it was originally a Conservative legislation from the Senate. S-245 was a private member's bill containing provisions to address lost Canadians. Conservatives were supportive of the original substance of that bill, but thanks to the Liberal government, the bill was significantly amended and eventually stalled at report stage. In May 2024, the Liberal government tabled Bill C-71, which drastically went beyond the original scope of Bill S-245. So we started with S-245, then C-71. Now we're dealing with Bill C-3. Bill C-3 has three separate pieces of information that must be understood individually. The first part is citizenship by descent. Mr. Speaker, we may not agree on everything in this House, but I believe we can all agree that becoming a Canadian citizen is a privilege. As written, Bill C-3 undermines Canadian citizenship. In fact, Canada has important safeguards in place that protect our citizenship, like the first-generation limit. Mr. Speaker, I want to stress that we have policy like this for a reason. As my colleagues have mentioned, at the height of the 2006 conflict, Lebanese Canadians living in Lebanon looked to the Canadian government for help, and Canada answered to the call, spending $94 million to successfully evacuate 15,000 Canadians to safety. Despite living in Lebanon full-time prior to the conflict and having little connection to Canada, they still benefited from their Canadian citizenship and became known as Canadians of convenience. Following a ceasefire in the conflict, many Lebanese Canadians immediately returned to Lebanon. This was a wake-up call for Canada, and in 2009, the previous Conservative government responded with implementing the first-generation limit. This reasonable measure set out that only the first generation of children born abroad to Canadian citizens could automatically obtain citizenship. And Mr. Speaker, you may be shocked to learn that this safeguard for Canadian citizenship against Canadians of convenience would be eliminated by Liberal Bill C-3 as written. The Liberals seek to replace this safeguard to obtaining citizenship by descent with something called substantial connection requirement. This extremely weak requirement simply means that parents must prove they spent 1,095 non-consecutive days physically in Canada before the birth of their child. This legislation won't even require a criminal record check, Mr. Speaker. Liberals believe that parents spending a few weeks or months spread out over decades is enough of a substantial connection to automatically extend citizenship to multiple generations of people born outside of Canada. And Mr. Speaker, we still don't understand what evidence will be required as proof the parent spent just over 1,000 days in Canada at any point in their life. Through Bill C-3, this Liberal government could be opening Canadian citizenship to people with criminal records or to individuals who may not even realize they could claim Canadian citizenship in the first place. When the previous version of this legislation was studied, the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimated that as many as 115,000 new citizens outside of Canada could be created. According to the National Post, and I quote, "The government had no idea how many people will be automatically granted citizenship if the legislation is passed," end quote. Why would the Liberal government create a new system of potentially limitless chain migration? This is deeply concerning. After 10 years of the Liberal government's Liberals destroying our immigration system, we can't be surprised, Mr. Speaker. Now, on the second part of this bill, which Conservatives do support, that is the adopted children provision. Right now, provisions in the Citizenship Act state that when a Canadian citizen adopts a person born outside of Canada, the parent would then need to start a lengthy process of applying for a child's permanent residence. Instead, this bill would remove an unnecessary burden on adopting parents and treat an adopted person as if they were born here in Canada, automatically granting Canadian citizenship to the child. This is a simple and reasonable approach to achieve an equal treatment for adopted children, and the Conservatives support this. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, we come to restoration of citizenship to lost Canadians. As a result of compounding legislation and amendments to Section 8 of the Citizenship Act, a group of people born to Canadian parents between February 15, 1977 and April 16, 1981 had to apply to reinstate their citizenship before turning 28 years old. Those who did not apply to reinstate their citizenship lost it, despite being raised in Canada, going to school, and starting their families here. Conservatives support provisions in Bill C-3 to correct this error. And Mr. Speaker, Canadians are paying the price for the Liberals' out-of-control immigration policies. And let me be clear, immigration is important to our country, but the government must have control over it. And right now, the Liberals have zero control over their immigration policy. Effective immigration policy should be tied to outcomes, and it should consider the supply of housing, health care, and jobs. This is important not only for Canadians who are trying to buy a house, find a job, and get a family doctor, but it's equally important for newcomers themselves. It's wrong to set immigrants up for failure in a country that doesn't have the capacity to support them. And unfortunately, the Liberals have lost complete control over immigration. Let's examine health care, for example. Last year, the Liberals brought in nearly 500,000 permanent immigrants. Meanwhile, 6.5 million Canadians don't have a family doctor. The Liberals see no problem adding hundreds of thousands of new patients to a healthcare system that is already overburdened. Meanwhile, emergency room closures are occurring on a regular basis, while healthcare workers are burnt out from working millions of hours of overtime. In fact, Canada is currently short at least 23,000 family doctors and 60,000 registered nurses, with these numbers set to dramatically increase in the next few years. You don't need to be an economics degree to understand that increasing demand on our healthcare system through unfocused immigration, while supply of capacity is collapsing, is a recipe for disaster. I guarantee you, our healthcare system is only going to get worse under the Liberal government's failed immigration policy. The Liberals aren't just driving up demand through their failed immigration policy, they have failed to build capacity too. While the government adds record demand to our healthcare system, at the same time, they are restricting supply of qualified healthcare professionals from working. According to the Health Minister's own department, of the 200,000 internationally trained health professionals employed in Canada, 80,000 are not working in their field. 80,000 internationally trained healthcare professionals who immigrated to Canada thinking there was a place for them to contribute to our overwhelmed healthcare system are being blocked from working. Mr. Speaker, I met a vascular surgeon from Brazil who has years of training and experience, yet sees no path to practicing in Canada. The Liberals bring doctors and nurses to Canada for their expertise and block them from working in their profession. I was in Toronto, where I met a doctor from Argentina with many years of experience. She came to Canada hoping to use her skills and experience to provide care for our people. Today, she works at Home Depot because gatekeepers and licensing bodies block her from getting certified to practice. For 10 years, the Liberals have turned immigration into a numbers game while ignoring capacity, ignoring the needs of Canadians, and ignoring the very newcomers they claim to welcome. Mr. Speaker, blocking doctors and nurses from working while adding millions of new patients to a broken healthcare system is insane. We cannot fix our broken healthcare system without fixing our broken immigration system first. Conservatives are committing to fixing the problem. We should only invite the right people in the right numbers so that our healthcare system can catch up. At the same time, we must implement a Blue Seal national professional testing standard to ensure foreign-trained healthcare workers can work in Canada. We must enable healthcare workers to take their skills wherever they are needed across our country. Conservatives know that the parts of Bill C-3 have potential, but we cannot support rushed Liberal legislation that is so poorly thought out. Conservatives will make recommendations to improve this legislation and implement real safeguards to strengthen the citizenship we are so blessed to have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, provinces do need to do a better job at recognizing the skills that immigrants bring to the country, in particular in the healthcare. That has been a chronic problem ever since I've been first elected back in 1988. Provinces must play a lead. Okay. Now, the member made reference to immigration and tried to blame immigration as the problem in healthcare today in terms of capacity. Some of the greatest shortages in Canada today in doctors is actually in the province of Manitoba. On the other hand, whether it's the Premier or the Minister of Immigration in Manitoba, both of them want to be able to see the current immigration levels to stay. They want to keep everyone that's in Manitoba to stay in Manitoba. They want to increase the numbers. How does that not conflict with what the member is saying? Does he believe our home province, we share the same home province, is wrong on their immigration requests?
The Honourable Member for Writing Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did say in my speech, we need immigration, without a doubt, Mr. Speaker. But to ignore the fact that our healthcare system is absolutely overburdened, and overburdened, we won't even allow the professionals that have been trained abroad a pathway to seek and to practice in the profession that they've been trained in other countries. That is just insane. And this Liberal government has propped that same failing system up for the last 10 years, and as a member admitted, he has done nothing about it.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I take exception to that. Every year, every opportunity I get, I advocate for recognizing the credentials that immigrants bring to Canada. And the member needs to realize, and the Conservative Party needs to realize, you can't just say, well, we're going to have a Blue Seal program. There's no depth whatsoever to that program. This is something in which you have to get the provinces to agree and participate in. Has the Conservative Party done any engagement with the provinces to give any legitimacy at all to their Blue Seal program?
The Honourable Member for Writing Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, yes, we have given lots of engagement right across this nation. I was in Nova Scotia during the summer. I've talked lots to provinces right across this country. And right across this country, we're hearing there is millions of Canadians waiting for a family doctor right now. 6.5 million Canadians. And we have immigrants coming in here with trained professionals from other countries and have seen no uptake, have no path forward. That's what the Blue Seal program is about.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to commend the member from Riding Mountain for his connection with communities over the summer. I watched his social media. He managed to connect with the people. We're dealing today with a government bill that is identical to a bill that was brought forward in the previous Parliament. They rejected amendments. The bill didn't bring it through, or didn't make it through the last Parliament, but they brought it back without change. It's like the old saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. Can the member tell me what he's heard from constituents in his riding, and why does he think the Liberals aren't listening to people? Thank you.
The member for Riding Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the excellent question. Well, what I've heard across the country is when it comes to citizenship, it is very precious to Canadians. We cherish that much. It is a privilege, and it's world-renowned. If you have the Canadian passport, it is sought after. And people from all over the world know that. Unfortunately, the Liberals have taken an approach where they have cheapened it. They've basically taken it and said, it's okay, you can come from anywhere, you can just live here a little bit, but have full access to all our programs and all the great things that make Canada the fantastic nation it is. And that is the thing I'm hearing from constituents and people right across this country. Please protect our Canadian citizenship, and please work to make that so it's cherished and upheld by the rest of the world.
Well done.
Resuming debate, reprise du débat, the Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's great to be able to be here and to talk on behalf of the great people of Dufferin-Caledon who've re-elected me to come to the House of Commons and fight for common sense, which is often a difficult thing to do with this Liberal government. And this piece of legislation is the perfect example of why we have to fight. So I want to talk a little bit about how these Liberals have absolutely destroyed the consensus in Canada on immigration, how they've botched the immigration system in so many ways, and they've brought that incompetent approach to this particular piece of legislation. And the consequences for this, of course, Mr. Speaker, will be far and wide, and ultimately Canadians will pay the price, like they pay the price for all the Liberal mistakes and errors and debacles and corruption over the past 10 years. So what pains me the most to talk about the breakdown of the consensus in this country on immigration and refugees is the fact that my wife actually came to Canada as a refugee. She's a Kosovar Albanian, and Canada had a wonderful program, Operation Parasol, to bring Kosovar Albanians fleeing from the ethnic cleansing that was going on in Kosovo at that time. And to see the reports of the decline on the consensus of Canada, known as the beacon of acceptance for immigration and refugees, watch that decline happen over the past 10 years because of Liberal incompetence it's really actually heartbreaking. Yeah. And most Canadians, I think, are heartbroken by this. There's a couple of polls actually that talk about this, which are really, in my estimation, tragic. Polera had a study in 2025 that compared to views from 2002. In 2002, immigration was viewed as a positive +31. In 2025, it's now down to a +2. That's a 29-point decline as a result of the mess that these people have made with respect to the immigration system. So these are catastrophic declines. And you also would look at the share of people who believe that Canada is accepting too many immigrants. Again, we go back to 2002, it was 34%. We look at 2025, it's now at 60%. Now, who's responsible for that? It's not the people that come to Canada. That's not their fault. They came to Canada because they want the opportunities and the better life that Canada provides, just like my wife and her family. My wife came to Canada with English as a second language. In fact, she spoke no English and went to high school and has gone on to get a master's degree and has had a great career. Yeah. That's the epitome of why people come to Canada, because of the opportunities that this great company affords. So when we look at what they've done, the mess they've made with the immigration system, it's a tragedy for all Canadians. And the fault and the buck stops 100% with the people on the other side here, because they've made this absolute mess. Now, I could talk for 3 hours about the actual specifics of the mess, but I mean, I would point out that at one point, this Liberal government allowed and accused ISIS terrorists to immigrate to Canada. This person was accused in 2015 of being in a video where they dismembered someone, and they let this person come to Canada. This is the disrepute they've brought the system into. And in fact, in 2024, Mr. Speaker, I actually did an OPQ, and I asked how many people were processing applications in CIC and how many applications were actually coming in. And then you can do some simple math. I know math isn't great for these guys. They think that an affordable housing program is 4,000 houses for $13 billion. So math is not their strong suit. Sure. But when you actually broke down the number of people who were processing the applications and the number of applications that were coming in, because they had set the levels so high, it worked out that someone assessing an immigration application had 30 minutes per application. Wow. 30 minutes. So you can imagine how someone like the person I just described ended up in Canada. You increase the volumes of people to such high levels, you have no security screening, and you end up with the challenges that we have. So again, now they've brought forward a piece of legislation on citizenship. And let me say, I'm a proud Canadian. I know my wife's proud Canadian, their whole family, they are proud Canadians as well. And they have created this very weak, substantial connection test. Now, what does that mean? Most people who are listening won't understand what that means, so I'm going to explain it. it means that, according to the Liberals, if you want to have Canadian citizenship extended to yourself and your children for generations on, you have 1,095 non-consecutive days in Canada. Now, what's the proof for that? They haven't even said. So somebody could just say, yeah, I spent 1,095 days in Canada over the last 25 years, and therefore my children, their children's children, and on we go, they all get Canadian citizenship. Now, this is weakening Canadian citizenship. It is making Canadians, and they don't even know the numbers of people this is going to affect, how many people that this citizenship is going to be extended to. And there will be no security checks. So we just talked about how the lack of security checks let an alleged ISIS terrorist into Canada, someone who was on a video in 2015 dismembering someone, but they don't think security checks would be an important part of extending citizenship to people who have no real connection with Canada. Maybe they spent 1,095 days in Canada at some point over their lifetime, maybe not, because we don't know how they're going to prove it, and they don't have to have a security check. They're going to try and say this is all very normal, we're solving a problem. Mr. Speaker, it's not normal. This approach isn't normal in the developed world. The United States, Britain, France, Italy, all cap citizenship to the first generation born abroad. Now, that's important because there is value in Canadian citizenship, and they are going to extend this to all kinds of people who have very little connection to Canada. And how far will that extend? We actually don't have the numbers. We have maybe some estimates, but even the government doesn't know, which of course doesn't surprise me, because they come up with things on the back of a napkin and never know what the consequence of that's going to be. It's much like when I was the shadow minister for the environment and I asked the deputy minister, what is the actual build out of the cost of the charging network all across Canada when we get to the 100% zero emission vehicle mandate? They looked at me and said, we haven't calculated that to the end point. So you're going to mandate no one gets to drive a gas-powered vehicle. They all have to be zero-emission vehicles, and you don't know what the cost of the charging network is going to be. This is how Liberals have run this country for the last 10 years, which is why we're in the mess we are on a whole host of levels. So I just had a town hall in the town of Bolton a couple of weeks ago, and let me tell you, immigration was absolutely on the agenda. So when I talk about the statistics of the decline in support for immigration, I felt it in person at that meeting. People are saying, Kyle, the numbers are too high. Now, if I had talked about this particular piece of legislation, I didn't get the opportunity, I know what the good people of Dufferin-Caledon would have said. They would have said, that's ridiculous. And many of the people in that town hall are immigrants. They came to this country because they wanted the opportunity that Canada provides. They would have been outraged with the decision to do this. So what has been the consequence of the mess they've made of immigration in Canada? We can look at the jobs market. Big topic of discussion at my town hall was, my son, my daughter can't get a job, which is one of the reasons why we have said we are eliminating the temporary foreign worker program. Because far too many people have come into this country taking jobs away from Canadians. So the TFW program is a part of that problem. The mess on immigration is going to take a very long time to fix, the Liberal mess on immigration. So when we look at this, we see an absolute another mess happening that the Liberals didn't have to make. They could have fixed this problem very simply, but they didn't. They chose a weak test, 1,095 days. At any point in your life, you get Canadian citizenship, and you can then pass it on to your children. Mr. Speaker, this is a terrible piece of legislation. Conservatives fought it in the last Parliament. We will fight it in this Parliament, and we will seek to make amendments to bring some common sense to this terrible piece of legislation. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Carleton Trade Eagle Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for that excellent speech, for outlining the issues that we on this side of the House have with this know that he's mentioned his wife and his wife's family who have come to Canada and who have embraced becoming Canadian citizens. And I'm wondering if he could comment on what the impact of reducing the requirement to obtain citizenship has on those individuals who are coming to Canada, who are going through the process, who perhaps are even fleeing persecution. What impact does that have on those individuals who have gone through a very lengthy process? Thank you.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague makes a perfect point on this. The people who have come to Canada because they wanted a better life, they played by the rules, they've worked hard, they've made fantastic lives and contributions to this country. They are going to look at this as an affront to the hard work that they did to come to Canada and become a successful and proud Canadian citizen. They would be outraged that someone who has spent almost no time in the country, it's not even any consecutive days. You could have spent something like 10 days in Canada over 30 years. Like, you basically vacationed here for 10 days over 30 years, you're going to get Canadian citizenship. It's outrageous, we're against it, and we will fight it.
Questions and comments? The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, very quickly, Mr. Speaker, the year 2002 that he cited immigration as being really good, I acknowledge that. What he doesn't do is he doesn't cite the many years in which Harper's administration was a disaster to immigration, where they, for example, deleted those applications, literally hundreds of thousands of individuals that were in the process of coming to Canada, or the 7-year waiting times in order to sponsor a parent, or the canceling of parents and grandparents program. There were serious problems that we were able to rectify. Today's issues is more of the temporary visas, and this is something in which the current Prime Minister has indicated that we are going to get on the right track, and we're working aggressively to do that. But my question to the member, Mr. Speaker, if I may, is using the example of Anna in the forces. She goes abroad, she has a child, comes back, her child then goes abroad to work. Should the child of that individual have the opportunity, or Anna's grandson or granddaughter have the opportunity?
I have to give a chance to the member to respond.
Speaker, I don't know if his discussion of the Conservative record on immigration is ignorance, or if his statements are malicious. But either way, they're completely erroneous and false.
A point of order for the Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
A point of order, Mr. Speaker. They're neither. They're factual.
As the Parliamentary well knows, that's a matter of debate. I'll let the member for Dufferin-Caledon finish.
When Prime Minister Harper took over, there was a massive backlog in the parent and grandparent category. They took over from the Liberals, around 150,000 people. So we were left with the mess that they left. Same thing in every single category. And so what we actually did is we put a temporary pause on the parent and grandparent application process, and then we cleared the entire backlog. So for him to try and stand here and say everything was rosy under a Liberal government and then somehow things changed. Look, Mr. Speaker, I know I'm not allowed to use certain words in this place, but what he's saying is worse than categorically false.
Yeah.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? Oh, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's just factually incorrect. I was the critic at the time. If the member was there, he would know that actually the waiting times to get a spouse was years through the Harper era. The Harper government literally canceled the parent and grandparent sponsorship program. The reason why they canceled it is because it was such a disaster that it took up to 7 years to get and sponsor a parent or grandparent to come to Canada. Harper was a disaster on immigration as a whole. Would he not confess to the reality of the situation? After all, he was there, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure if he was to, and I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, that he can recall that.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon in 25 seconds or less.
I confess he lives in an alternate reality, Mr. Speaker, because this was how they set up the parent and grandparent program. An unlimited number of people could apply, then they let in 14,000 people. All those other people went on a waiting list. The next year, they opened it up. An unlimited number of people could apply, they let 14,000 in. All the rest went on a waiting list. The next year, and so on, and so on, and so on. That's how they managed the parent and grandparent category. It was an absolute mess. We had to clean it up, and guess what? A Conservative government are going to clean up a lot of messes, including the...
Resuming debate. Reprise du débat, the honourable member for Vernon Lake Country, Monashee.
It is good to rise in this House again after time in my riding, Mr. Speaker, speaking with constituents and hearing directly from Canadians. It's always a privilege to stand here and debate legislation that touches not only on national policy, but on the very fabric of what it means to be Canadian. We're debating Bill C-3, an act to amend the Citizenship Act. This bill speaks to Canadian identity itself and to the value of Canadian identity. Let us be clear. Canadian citizenship is not just a piece of paper or a passport. It is a promise. It's a promise of loyalty, commitment, and shared responsibility. It represents hard-won freedoms and responsibilities that generations of Canadians have defended and cherished. Mr. Speaker, Conservatives have always believed that citizenship must be fair, secure, and meaningful. It must reflect a genuine connection to this country, not just in words, but in participation and commitment. Unfortunately, Bill C-3 undermines these principles. Now, there are parts of the bill we do support. We agree that the adopted children of Canadian citizens born abroad should be treated equally with biological children. That is fair, just, and long overdue. We also agree that the injustice of lost Canadians, those Canadians who fell through the gaps in the law through no fault of their own, must be corrected. These are people who grew up here, worked here, paid taxes, and lived as Canadians. That should never have been in doubt. Fixing those wrongs is the right thing to do. But, Mr. Speaker, where this bill fails, and fails profoundly, is in its removal of the first-generation limit on citizenship by descent and its replacement with a flimsy so-called substantial connection test. That safeguard, introduced by the previous Conservative government in 2009, was put in place for good reason. We saw in 2006 what happens when citizenship can be passed down endlessly without connection. During the Lebanon conflict, thousands of Canadians of convenience, people with little or no real ties to Canada, sought evacuation at enormous cost to Canadian taxpayers. Nearly $94 million was spent bringing 14,000 people to safety, many of whom returned abroad as soon as the crisis ended. That incident showed us the danger of limitless citizenship inheritance. The first-generation limit was a necessary, reasonable measure to protect the value of Canadian citizenship. Bill C-3 throws that safeguard out the window. Under the Liberals' new connection test, a parent could pass on citizenship if they had lived in Canada for just 1,095 non-consecutive days at any point in their life. That could mean 3 years spent here decades ago as a student before moving abroad permanently. That is not a substantial connection. It is one under the Liberals' plan, but it is not a real substantial connection. This is a brief chapter, not a life, and yet this bill treats it as equal to the lifelong commitment of Canadians who build communities, raise families, and invest our futures here. This is not fair, it is not equal, and it is not responsible. What message does this send to newcomers who follow every rule, study for and pass the citizenship test, meet the residency requirements, and undergo full security checks? These individuals invest years of their lives in Canada before earning citizenship. Meanwhile, under this bill, others could inherit the citizenship automatically without ever paying taxes, speaking an official language, or engaging in Canadian society. That is a two-tier system, and it devalues the hard work of genuine immigrants. There are also serious security implications. Bill C-3 does not require a criminal background check for those inheriting citizens under the so-called connection. Conservatives propose reasonable amendments to address this, including measures to exclude those with serious criminal records. The Liberals voted them down. At a time when Canadians are concerned about public safety, this is entirely reckless. Let us be clear about the costs. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has warned that this change could create over 115,000 new citizens almost immediately, many of whom live permanently abroad. But we have no idea, Mr. Speaker, what the real numbers are. Processing these cases will cost at least $21 million up front, with far higher long-term costs to health care, pensions, and other services. Canadians who work hard and pay taxes their whole lives will be asked to subsidize citizens of convenience who have never contributed a dime to our country. Meanwhile, immigration, refugees, and Citizenship Canada are already overwhelmed. Constituents across this country tell us about endless delays for visitor visas, family reunifications, and citizenship ceremonies. The Ontario Supreme Court has even ruled that the IRCC has a 50% error rate in processing. Yet the Liberals want to add tens of thousands of new cases with no plan, no resources, and no clear analysis of the impact. Peer countries are far more cautious. The United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy all limit citizenship by descent to the first generation abroad. Canada is either an outlier under this Liberal scheme, and not in a good way. As immigration lawyers and experts have warned, this bill is a reckless response to a flawed court ruling, and it extends citizenship far beyond any reasonable connection. Mr. Speaker, Canadian citizenship is precious. It is not an insurance policy for those who want to live abroad and return only when trouble strikes. It is not a convenience for those who want benefits without responsibility. It must mean more. Conservatives oppose aspects of this bill because it cheapens Canadian citizenship, undermines fairness, and exposes taxpayers to enormous risk. We don't even know what the extent of the risk is because there's no analysis done. We support targeted reforms for adopted children and lost Canadians, but we reject the removal of the first-generation safeguard. As former Liberal Minister Lucien Roubillard once said, we ought to share our citizens with those who want it and work hard to deserve it. Conservatives agree. Canadian citizenship must be earned, not given away like candy or Liberal promises. Mr. Speaker, citizenship is not just a document. It is a commitment to Canada, its people, and its future. Only common sense Conservatives will ensure that it remains strong, meaningful, and respected around the world. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, if I may, I'd like to give a hypothetical example that reflects the reality in many ways. And that is, let's say you have Anna, who's a member of the Canadian Forces, and she's posted overseas. After her posting, or during her posting overseas, she has a child. Then she comes back to Canada with child. As the years go by, her child gets a job opportunity in Europe. As a direct result of that, if her daughter has a child, questions about citizenship would be raised. My question to the member is, does he believe Anna, the member of the Canadian Forces that actually had the posting overseas, should be able to have her grandchild as a Canadian?
The Honourable Member.
I'm not going to deal with hypotheticals. There are all sorts of hypotheticals we can weave together to make some sort of narrative out of it. I'm not going to do that. These things will be dealt with as they arrive, quite through the courts, as you know. I'm not going to deal with hypotheticals. I can come up with 10 dozen hypotheticals for you too.
Just before we continue, the you words through the speaker, I won't be responding. Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, the requirement for the criminal records check is not written within the legislation. This is something that I'm extremely concerned about, something that I hear, and I'm just curious if my colleague would like to speak to that or expand on that a little bit more and just give him opportunity to respond if this is a concern that he also has. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Vernon, Lake Country, Monashee.
Certainly. I mean, the answer presents itself in our history. We've let numerous people who should not be here through. Often the problem is a lack of criminal record check. We must safeguard our borders. We have to do that. We have to do it for our own sake. We have to do it for international reasons. We cannot simply open the gates and let people in without any sort of criminal record check at all.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for his speech today. I'm just wondering if he would be able to advise the House if in his review of this legislation, he has seen a plan included in the legislation to solve the new influx of citizenship applications if we're going to add 30% more in just 5 years.
Honourable member.
Certainly. There has been no analysis. We have no idea whether it's 30%. We have no idea what the actual number of new Canadian citizens will be. And this at a time when our immigration system is buckling, frankly, from too many people coming in. To add to that is reckless, as I said in the speech. It's irresponsible, it's reckless. There's been no analysis done whatsoever. I mean, this is kind of the way that the Liberal government has operated, is do things because they sound good on paper without any analysis, and they end up creating a new disaster. And there are several disasters that we're dealing with right now because of that problem. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do want to go back to the hypothetical example that I gave to the member. Often when you take a look at legislation, you reflect in terms of the need for the legislation based on what's happening abroad or in our communities. I think it's a legitimate question to ask the member for his, at the very least, his own personal opinion, Mr. Speaker, in regards to should, in that case that I raised with Anna, should her grandson or granddaughter be allowed to have a Canadian citizenship? She shouldn't have to go to a court to make that determination. We're saying, yes, that Anna's granddaughter or grandson would, in fact, be able to have a Canadian citizenship. Does he believe that that should be the case?
The Honourable Member for Vernon Lake Country, Monashee, in 30 seconds or less.
I'm not going to make a judgment on a hypothetical. Again, you're creating a hypothetical. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, a hypothetical question has been put to me that I have no answer for. The courts certainly do have an answer for it. I would simply ask the member to reflect on some of the people we have let in who should not be here.
Reprise de débat.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to take the floor today to speak to Bill C3. This is a transformative bill around Canadian citizenship, and fundamentally, the purpose of this bill is to recognize people's ongoing links with Canada, regardless of wherever their lives may have taken them. I've been a member, and since 2015, I've met with a number of families in my riding, and they've been reunited through immigration. And my family, the Lauzon, and the people in my riding, we have no links in my family to people from other nations, but I've had to deal with cases in my office, and the support, the assistance we were able to provide those families, I saw firsthand how important that was to them. And fundamentally, this bill would help true family, help people with true connections, and to give them a status. But beyond that, it's about belonging to a diverse and welcoming community. So the fact is, we live in a world, in an ideal world, we should be able to reunite all families. But unfortunately, that's not the reality of today. In today's interconnected world, where immigration and mobility are omnipresent, Canada can set an example here to other countries in the world and show them how important family reunification is. So Canada has to take a principled approach to this that includes diversity and trans-border families, and we need to help the many Canadians who live and work abroad, people in the arts, culture, science, education, global trade, and in the humanitarian sector. Those are just some examples of the fields Canadians work in outside Canada. But they maintain strong ties to Canada. And it's important to ensure that the children of these Canadians, whether they are born or raised abroad, this is a question of not just fairness, but also strengthening social cohesion. And today, I'd like to tell you what new Canadians have said about the importance of citizenship, what foreigners who've come to Canada have told me since 2015. The conversations we've had with families about the importance of reuniting children and grandchildren. The importance of citizenship on that point, and the common values around citizenship. Becoming a Canadian is a privilege. It's a privilege, but it's often described as a great source of pride. And our government has taken a serious look at this legislation in an effort to make up for the shortcomings of previous versions. People feel at home here, and they feel proud of their journey to becoming Canadian citizens. Becoming a Canadian citizen is the ultimate destination after years of effort and sacrifice, not just for the individual, but also often for the entire family. Many families have gone through hardship, and this is a time of connection and community and the ability to belong to something bigger than oneself. These testimonies are often very emotional. New arrivals, often with their children, cling to their citizenship certificate with pride. They have a sense of pride to belong to this great country. And this applies also to people who aspire to make Canada their home. Mr. Speaker, for those who are fleeing conflict, persecution, or hardship, Canadian citizenship represents a fresh start, a new life, a second chance for life. It's a privilege that most don't take lightly. The gratitude expressed by new citizens is a deep gratitude. And people often think of the opportunities Canada offers them, especially in education, healthcare, and peace. These are the cornerstones of a better future, not just for new citizens themselves, but also for their children and future generations. Whether it's by volunteering or participating in cultural events, or just getting to know their neighbors, new Canadians actively participate in strengthening the social fabric of this country. The generosity of Canada inspires them to contribute in many ways to our society. We all know someone in our circles today, especially when you're a federal MP in Ottawa. As a government, we need to remain vigilant to ensure that Canadian citizenship remains a symbol of inclusiveness, fairness, and security, as well as a commitment to those things. And why is it important to me, this bill, C3? Well, this is the very reason we presented this bill, to ensure that citizenship remains fair and transparent. At a time when there's misinformation that's breeding distrust in public institutions, Canada must demonstrate its commitment to fairness, and that goes beyond our borders. The idea of being able to pass citizenship beyond one generation strengthens the ties, the contributions, and the values of citizens. The government has a duty not only to protect citizenship, but also to set out clearly what the process is for obtaining it. And the government has a responsibility to uphold the value of Canadian citizenship. If this was limited to one generation, it would be difficult to accomplish those goals. In the future, children born abroad beyond the first generation will be eligible for citizenship if their Canadian parents can demonstrate a substantial connection with Canada. In the future, as long as the Canadian parent born abroad has accumulated 3 years of physical presence in Canada, that child will also be born a citizen. The purpose and the structure of the legislation will continue to be monitored after passage of this legislation. So children born abroad to Canadians want to be treated in as similar a fashion as those born in Canada. Citizenship entails a great responsibility, the responsibility to participate, to commit, and to help make our country what it is. Citizenship is not just a destination, it's a journey. It's a commitment to the community, to justice and mutual respect. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, citizenship, Canadian citizenship, is an important step. It's a privilege that also comes with responsibilities. A duty to respect the values that unite us. It's not just a legal question. It's about who we are and who we want to be. This bill is more about inclusion than exclusion. Canadians all around the world and their children who have a connection to our country, they're important. Their history, their contributions, their sense of belonging are all part of what makes Canada strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Questions and comments?
Member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his speech. We often see that the Liberals don't plan into the future with legislation they bring to this House. And so we often hear of Indigenous people speaking about 7 generations, consideration of 7 generations into the future. Can the member opposite tell me what work his government has done to determine how many new citizens of Canada this would create 7 generations into the future? And what are the numbers of new citizens this would bring in 7 generations into the future? Surely the government must have looked at this to see what the numbers are.
The honourable member for Argenteuil. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to respond to my colleague's question. We're talking about family reunification. We're talking about a government that is reaching out to help reunite families. I'd like to hear my colleague, though, how many families have not been reunited since 2009 when Harper made cuts that set the limit to just one generation. Families were broken today. We're trying to fix the errors of the Harper government.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the member is in regards to just the importance of the legislation, in particular the Lost Canadians. The Lost Canadians are individuals that should have their Canadian citizenship, and I think that is something in which all members agree on. At least I believe that to be the case, and just the importance of seeing this legislation pass so that those individuals in particular will in fact be able to get their citizenship.
Le député d'Argenteuil.
The honourable member for Argenteuil. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his excellent question. The importance of reuniting Canadian families is something that's in the DNA of Liberals. I've been in politics since 2015, and one of the main reasons is that we're a welcoming country. We are here for inclusiveness for all communities. I had the opportunity to have a family that's entirely Canadian, entirely Quebecer. We're all from the same place. But what I've experienced since 2015 has been so heartwarming, so moving. The entire riding has been able to help many families, especially with family reunification and reuniting children with families. I think that's essential, an essential part of life.
Député de Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup.
The member for Côte-du-Sud. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When my colleague refers to errors of the past and blames the Conservatives, I have to say, in all sincerity, that what the Liberals have done over the past 10 years has been a series of errors. They've brought so many people into this country that now we're having to exclude temporary foreign workers and so on. There's a lot of upheaval in families. They're being torn apart. They've worked here for years. They've been helping feed Canadians. And now they're accusing us of things that happened 15 years ago, which we didn't even do in reality, but they're turning a blind eye to the errors they've made over the past 10 years. The honourable member for Argenteuil-la-Petite-Nation. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd invite my colleague to take a second look at history, because decisions were made in 2009. Limits were set on family reunification. It was limited to one generation. It's right there in the legislation. I didn't make this up. And from then on, there's been a deterioration of the family reunification situation in Canada, and now it's a court decision that has forced us to legislate to respect the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, to respect human rights, and to redress the errors of the past, Mr. Speaker.
Reprise de débat. Resuming debate. Reprise de débat. Is the House ready for the question? The question is as follows. Mrs. Diab, seconded by Mrs. de Brussen, moved that Bill C-3, an act to amend the Citizenship Act 2025, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Si un député participe.
If a member participating in person wishes that the motion be carried or carried on division, or if a member of a recognized party participating in person wishes to request a recorded division, I would invite them to rise and indicate it to the chair.
The Government Deputy House Leader.
Speaker would like a recorded vote.
Conformément à l'article.
Pursuant to Standing Order 45, the division stands deferred until Monday after question period.
Order. Statements by members. Déclaration de députés. Le député de